Let's get this out of the way to start. If you're a podcaster and this is the board you're looking at, just buy it. It's a fantastic piece of gear that does everything that the original RCP did and even more. For the average podcaster, this thing's a beast. And frankly, if you're using this with a Mac, again, this is spotless. There is no buyer remorse whatsoever with the Rodecaster Pro 2. For everyone else that's looking to do other things with it, well, then it does get a bit complicated, doesn't it? Now, I did go over this in my first impressions video, but let's touch on some of what I learned this week. I stopped noticing the plastic shell the moment it went on my desk. I don't move around a lot with this thing, so I didn't get to test how durable it is on the go, but I'm sure more on that will come out as the unit ages. Mostly everything worked as expected, and the whole thing's pretty much a delight to use. The touchscreen was very responsive, and though I heard a bit of feedback from some that there were misclicks, I didn't find that. I did, however, note that the angled screen caused some misclicks if I was directly over top and trying to get my fat fingers to do something. That perspective isn't perfect, but from desk level, I had no issues with it. All the ports are tight, no issues across the board, pun totally intended. This is just one really nice looking unit. The I/O is 4 in and 4 out, though the supported tracks are listed at 14 with 12 in and the stereo mix. It's 24-bit, 48 kilohertz. The mic inputs are 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Line outs are plus 4 dBu, and the EIN measured at neg 131.5 dBVA weighted. It comes with a nice 3-band EQ as well as the usual Rode effects, as well as some built-in delay reverb and pitch shift. Now, I found the menus to be a bit confusing at first, but to be honest, there's so much packed in there, it might just be down to complete overload of stuff. Now, this critique is probably all for naught, because as someone uses the unit more and more, the menus should become easier to navigate. Also, I guess it would help if you were to go page by page through the manual, but I mean, who has time for that, right? Aside from that confusion, I think it's a very robust UI, and there are a ton of gems to discover. There is one mild complaint here, though. I hate using this knob as the controller to change settings. I always assume I have the ability to change the settings with my finger on the touchscreen, though I guess that's something I could get used to pretty quick. I have to say, one of the biggest and coolest features on this thing now is the ability to assign channels to the board. You aren't just stuck with whatever you have, you can literally mix around all of your available channels and customize this thing to whatever works for you. Turn channel 4 into a virtual channel. Why not? I like to keep my sound pads on the virtual channel, but give my computer pass-through its own fader. All this customization will come in handy when we're finally given the opportunity to start routing outs in a future update. This is probably one of my favorite features, hands down. Now, I'm not going to bother with the reverb and delay reviews. It's not really something I see fitting in with a lot of buyers at this time. That said, I will be taking this thing for a full song recording review, so stay tuned for that. Now, the ease of use for beginners is here, as you can adjust the processing in very simple terms here, with depth, sparkle, and punch. But if you want a more in-depth approach to the processing, you can just go to the advanced tab. And there are some great quality of life upgrades here from the last time that I played with the original Rodecaster Pro. And the big one is the visualizer. I love seeing that, and it's going to help with a lot of people that aren't well versed in setting up things like compressors to get the hang of it, and perhaps allow for some better sounding audio. Now, one of the questions I got was, is the compressor super harsh still? No, the compression was never harsh before, and it isn't now. However, people did have harsh compression and EQ settings before because they were trying to push a dynamic mic that had no business being used with that board. Now, if you're dumping in a bunch of processing and trying to get the SM7B to sound a little bit less distant, it's going to sound pretty harsh. But with the ample amount of clean gain on this thing, I think that's going to be a thing of the past. The original Rodecaster Pro did have fantastic processing, and I think it is so much better here due to the supporting cast of specs like gain and EIN really making this a standout. Now, I did see a lot of people complaining that their SM7B wouldn't work. I have no idea how to respond to that, considering this is like the simplest mic. It's a dynamic. I don't know how that's possible. I believe you, but I still don't know how it's possible. And frankly, using this, I find like it's one of the best outcomes that I could have expected from this. By the way, I'm not even boosting this much in post, and there is no processing on at the moment. So honestly, I don't know how it can get much better than this. But saying that, let's turn on the processing and see what we can get. I don't actually have the noise gate on because I don't need it, and I did find it stomping out some of my words. But this is with all the processing on. Makes for a nice full body sound, and it's fully customizable. This thing is fantastic. Now, let's test the preamps of the Rodecaster Pro 2 with the SM7B. Right now, I actually have the SM7B preset already selected. The level's at 55 dB, and my fader's sitting just above Unity. By the way, this is with all the processing off, just so you know. Now, we're going to ramp it up and see how much sound these preamps make. Now let's move into some of the under the hood features here. I do love the storage options with this thing. The ability to not only see everything connected to the Rodecaster Pro 2, but also directing it where to record. It's a really nice touch, and for the most part, you don't even have to wipe the drive for it to work. Kind of a cool feature. And it can allow you to run with multiple redundant backups, so you can be sure to never lose a thing. And then there's the sound pads that are now smart pads. And they can do a variety of things, from full board control to voice changing, and of course, they actually do play sounds as well. Next up, under the display settings, you can actually choose the broadcast style metering for your VU meters. And then under show, you can have all the save settings from all the shows you have going on. A really nice touch if you don't want to be switching around the board all the time. All right, then let's get on to the contentious part for a lot of people. The output and routing for this machine is, it's different. And it might take you a bit to get used to. Now, there are 3 total outputs here. You've got main, chat, and 2. Main and chat are on the same, USB 1. Chat being the mix-minus setup for the interviews over apps and such. And USB 2 is a simple secondary input-output that is a stereo file, so it can't be multi-track. Now, at the same time, USB 2 can be used as an input for a phone, and it would have its own channel on the board. But on top of that, there are also secondary ASIO drivers that allow you to record in a DAW with multi-track, which I find a bit odd. I'm so used to the ASIO drivers being the system drivers and not this driver salad. Once again, though, why am I not on a Mac? I don't know. Anyhow, it is a bit confusing at first, but you do get used to it. However, the routing that a lot of people are expecting, it's just not here. The ability to bus your audio to specific places, much like you can do with the PreSonus Revelator, was rather expected from many. And it's just a few days ago that we heard that it is on the way in a future update. Right now, it just doesn't work, and there's no way to specify which sources you want going to a specific program outside of that USB 1 chat. As for my issues, for the better part of a week, I struggled getting the chat channel up and running. I wanted so bad for it to work on my daily drive computer, but it just wasn't going to happen. And as I found out, the problem actually isn't with the board. It's an issue with Windows 10 being, well, Windows 10. I found that out pretty quick when I plugged it into my Windows 11 computer, and it just worked. Just like that. I wish I'd tried something like that around Tuesday. I would have cried a whole lot less. And the other issue I've been having is that with the ASIO drivers, they just randomly decide not to work. The issue would happen if I was already listening to an audio source through the main drivers like YouTube or CleanFeed, and then I tried to open Adobe Audition to use the ASIO drivers. In that situation, I would actually have to reboot and make sure to open Audition with those drivers engaged, and then continue on with my day. Again, I have not been able to recreate that issue with the Windows 11 laptop, but I will keep my eyes open in the future for it. By the way, Rode is aware of those 2 issues, and they are trying to recreate it to solve it. So then what could we add to this board to make it better? Well, I think the unit's pretty damn perfect. Like, it's damn near perfect. How's that? But there are some improvements that I could envision. 2, to be specific. First of all, I would love a routing matrix in the end, to be able to specify exactly what's going where for everything. I have no idea what Rode has in place for the routing going forward, but a routing matrix would be perfect. And I know this is a big ask, but here's why I'm starting with such a recommendation. This unit needs to be better than the PreSonus Revelator. Rode cannot be outclassed in any way by the Revelator, a unit that costs $500 less. One cannot rule the world with a weakness like that. We all know how that turns out. And yes, I'm serious. Something as simple as routing makes or breaks this for a lot of people. And with that ability, this thing will actually rule the world. Wait a second, didn't I say there was two things? Oh yes, this button, I want that to mute the outs. You could do that. That'd be great. I think it's easy to see that this is headed for greatness. And honestly, with a rollout like this, the reason it isn't flopping is because Rode is on it. They are reacting in real time, trying to get the fixes out, answering the calls. And while there might be a few lemons out there in the world, which is expected, well, they've been doing what they need to do. Once they get over that initial hump of problem solving and they get that outboard routing figured out, this thing is going to be a beast. It's not going to be beat by anybody in the game. By the way, a few bonuses out of this, by the way. The OG Rodecaster is going to be super cheap on the used market soon, and they're still updating that. It's still a fantastic machine for sure. And all of the others will be there as well, meaning everyone is going to have a shot at creating content and finding out if this is their next calling. And that means everybody wins. And that is a good thing. By the way, I do plan on getting more of these videos done when the updates start rolling out. So stay tuned so you don't miss a thing. Cheers, and I will see you. It's been a long week. In the next video.